Welcome back to Gambling Flow, your daily hit of, well, all things gambling. I'm Russell Kane, your host for this deep dive into a topic that might just make you a little paranoid the next time you're at the casino. Today we're looking at casinos caught cheating. And to guide us through this murky world, we have Fiona Blake, an expert in casino regulations, and someone who knows a thing or two about the history of gambling.
Oh, it's great to be here, Russell. You could say I've spent, well, quite a lot of time peering behind the curtain of the gambling world. And it's a place where things aren't always as they appear.
That's what makes this so interesting, right? I mean, we all know the house has an edge. It's part of the game. But what happens when casinos decide to push that edge a little too far? To bend the rules or maybe even break them?
Well, Russell, cheating in casinos, it comes in many forms, from, well, very subtle manipulations to some really blatant scams. It's a world where technology and psychology, even good old-fashioned greed, all collide.
I think most people probably picture casino cheating as something from, like, the Wild West. You know, card sharps palming aces in those smoky saloons. Was cheating really that common back in the day?
Oh, absolutely. In the early days of gambling, cheating was practically an art form. Gamblers and the house, they were constantly trying to outsmart each other. Back then, disputes often involved more than just words.
I can imagine. But those days are gone, right? Surely with all the regulations and the technology in modern casinos, cheating is a thing of the past.
You would think so, wouldn't you? But it's not that simple. While casinos today are, heavily regulated and monitored, there are still cases where they try to game the system, sometimes in ways that might surprise you.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Let's hear about some of these modern-day casino cheats. What are some of the most shocking cases you've uncovered in your research?
One case that always comes to mind is Crown Casino in Melbourne, Australia. Back in 2018, they were fined quite a hefty sum for something that might seem relatively minor at first. They were blanking buttons on their poker machines.
Blanking buttons. What exactly does that mean? I'm not a big poker machine player myself.
Basically, they removed some of the betting options on almost 20 of their poker machines. So players could only bet on all 40 lines or just a single line. They couldn't choose to bet on, say, 5 or 10 or 20 lines like you normally could.
I see. So how does that give the casino an advantage? It just sounds like fewer choices for the players.
Well, by limiting player choices, they were subtly pushing players towards making higher bets. And this, in turn, increased the house edge. Meaning, well, the casino was mathematically more likely to win over time. It was a way to, tilt the odds in their favor without players even realizing what was happening.
That's pretty sneaky. But they got caught, right?
Yes, they did. 3 whistleblowers working at the casino, they exposed the scheme. And the Victorian Commission for Gambling and Liquor Regulation, well, they didn't take it lightly. Crown Casino was hit with a $225,000 fine for violating the Gambling Regulation Act. At the time, it was the largest fine of its kind in Australia.
Wow, that's a serious penalty. It shows that regulators are paying attention to these sorts of tactics. But you mentioned something about Crown Casino receiving an even larger fine later on. Was that related to this button blanking scheme?
No, this later fine was for something completely different. In 2022, Crown Casino was fined a record-breaking $120 million for enabling harmful gambling practices. This wasn't about rigging the games themselves, but rather how they were treating their players, particularly those who were, losing heavily. They were found to be offering excessive freebies, allowing, those marathon gambling sessions that lasted for over 24 hours, even giving special treatment to high-rolling gamblers who were on a losing streak.
That's disturbing to hear. It shows how cheating can take many forms. And that it's not always about the games themselves. Exploiting vulnerable people who might be struggling with gambling addiction is, well, that's a whole other level of unethical behavior.
Exactly, Russell. And these cases with Crown Casino, they highlight a crucial point. Cheating isn't always about some, elaborate scheme to rig the games. It can also be about subtly manipulating the rules or exploiting players' weaknesses to gain an unfair advantage.
It's a sobering thought. It makes you realize that it's not just about watching out for, marked cards or loaded dice. Sometimes the cheating is happening on a more, psychological level. But let's move on to another case. You mentioned Golden Nugget in Atlantic City, New Jersey. What happened there?
This case from 2012, it's fascinating because it revolves around a group of players who were, incredibly observant and lucky. Imagine yourself sitting at a mini baccarat table. And you start noticing that the same sequence of cards is, repeating itself over and over again.
Wait, so the deck wasn't being shuffled properly? That seems like a pretty basic mistake for a casino to make.
It does, doesn't it? But that's exactly what happened. These 14 players, they were astute enough to spot the pattern. And instead of betting their, usual $10 a hand, they quickly upped their stakes to $5,000, taking full advantage of their newfound knowledge.
I bet the casino staff were getting a little nervous at that point.
They were definitely suspicious, especially as the players, racked up win after win, 41 consecutive wins in total. But they couldn't pinpoint any actual cheating on the part of the players. They were just playing the game, albeit with the advantage of knowing what cards were coming next.
So what happened when the casino finally realized what was going on? Did they pay out the winnings?
Initially, they refused. They tried to blame the card manufacturer, claiming the cards were defective, but the players, they took the casino to court, and a judge ultimately ruled in their favor.
That's interesting. So even though the players were essentially exploiting a mistake by the casino, they were still entitled to their winnings because they hadn't actually broken any rules themselves.
Exactly. The judge's ruling was clear. If a casino makes a mistake, even an unintentional one, players who capitalize on it fairly are within their rights to claim their winnings.
That sets a fascinating legal precedent. It makes you wonder how casinos balance protecting themselves from exploitation while ensuring fair play. Where's the line between astute observation and taking advantage of unintentional errors?
That's a question that casinos grapple with constantly, and as technology evolves, that line becomes even blurrier. But let's move on from players exploiting casino mistakes and look at a case where a casino was actually accused of cheating the government.
Now that's a twist I wasn't expecting. Tell me more about this case.
This case involves Normandy Casino in Gardena, California. It all revolves around those high rollers. The big spenders casinos love to pamper, with like penthouse suites and VIP treatment.
Those are the players who can win or lose fortunes in a single night, right?
Exactly. But in this case, Normandy Casino went a step further than just, offering luxurious perks. They were actively helping these high rollers conceal their winnings from the IRS.
Wait, how are they doing that? Weren't they required to report large winnings to the authorities?
They were. Casinos are legally obligated to report any winnings over $10,000 to the IRS. But Normandy Casino found a way around this. Instead of reporting these large wins, they broke down the payments into multiple smaller transactions, effectively helping these high rollers, dodge their tax obligations.
That's a clear violation of the law. Weren't they worried about getting caught?
Perhaps they thought they were being clever, but their scheme eventually unraveled. They were caught and fined $1 million in 2016 for violating the Bank Secrecy Act, a law designed to prevent money laundering and tax evasion.
So they weren't just cheating players, they were cheating the government too. It's amazing how greed can drive people to such lengths.
It's a reminder that casinos, despite being heavily regulated, are still businesses that are driven by profit. And sometimes that pursuit of profit can lead them, down a slippery slope.
We've covered a lot of ground already, from Australia to the U.S. And it's clear that casino cheating is a, global phenomenon. But whenever anyone mentions Las Vegas and shady dealings, I can't help but think of the mob. Did you come across any cases in your research that involved organized crime?
Of course. When you talk about the history of casinos and cheating, you can't ignore the influence of organized crime, especially in Las Vegas. One iconic case that illustrates this era is the Stardust.
Oh, yes, the Stardust. Wasn't it the casino featured in the movie Casino?
Yeah.
The one with all the mobsters and the skimming operation?
That's the one. While the casino in the movie was called the Tangiers, it was directly inspired by the Stardust and its, infamous skimming operation in the 1970s. In reality, the story was just as dramatic, if not more so.
So what exactly happened at the Stardust? Was it all just Hollywood exaggeration, or was there real mob involvement?
The reality was far more shocking than any movie. The hotel was bought by a man named Alan Glick and a company called the Argent Corporation. But it was all a front for a syndicate of Midwestern crime families. They were skimming millions of dollars from the casino, cheating everyone in the process, from the players to the government.
So they were making money hand over fist, both legitimately and illegitimately. But surely they couldn't keep up this scheme forever, could they?
They couldn't. The FBI spent years investigating this elaborate skimming operation. And in 1983, a federal grand jury indicted 15 people involved in the scheme. This marked a turning point in the history of Las Vegas, as it signaled the beginning of the end for the mob's control over the city's casinos.
It's fascinating how the downfall of the Stardust, a casino built on cheating and corruption, actually helped to usher in a new era for Las Vegas, one that was, at least in theory, cleaner and more regulated. But even though organized crime's grip on casinos has loosened, It seems like there are still plenty of opportunities for shady dealings in the modern world.
You're absolutely right. And one of the biggest challenges facing casinos today is the threat of money laundering schemes.
Right, money laundering, that age-old problem of trying to make dirty money look clean, is something you hear about a lot in the news. But I'm not sure I fully understand how it works in the context of casinos.
It's actually quite simple. Criminals looking to disguise the illegal origins of their money use casinos as a way to clean their cash. They might deposit large sums of illicit funds, gamble a small amount, and then cash out, making it appear as if the money came from, legitimate winnings.
I see, so the casino becomes an unwitting accomplice in the crime, even if they're not actively involved in the money laundering scheme itself.
Exactly. And even giant corporations like Caesars Entertainment Corp., one of the biggest names in the casino industry, haven't been immune to this problem. Back in 2015, they were hit with a $1.5 million fine by the Nevada Gaming Commission for failing to report suspicious transactions, including large wire transfers from Asia.
That sounds like a major oversight, especially for a company of that size. You would think they would have systems in place to, flag these sorts of transactions.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But it goes to show that even the biggest players in the industry can get caught up in money laundering schemes, either intentionally or through negligence. This case was a stark reminder that casinos have a responsibility to be, well, incredibly vigilant. When it comes to preventing money laundering, it's not enough to just focus on preventing players from cheating or ensuring the games are fair. They also have to play an active role in combating financial crime.
This is also intriguing, Fiona. You've taken us from blank buttons to mob skimming to international money laundering schemes. It's clear that the world of casino cheating is far more complex and widespread than most people realize. But we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, it really does underscore the need for, well, robust oversight and a culture of compliance within the gambling industry.
But Fiona, are there other examples of, companies that provide services to casinos also getting tangled up in these sorts of situations?
Absolutely. Russell, one company that springs to mind is CG Technology, or CGT, as it's commonly known. They were a major provider of sportsbook software for a lot of casinos in Las Vegas.
So they were essentially the brains behind the betting operations at places like the Hard Rock Hotel, the Venetian, the Tropicana. That's a huge responsibility to shoulder.
It certainly is. And unfortunately, CGT had a bit of a, well, history when it came to running afoul of regulations.
Really? What sort of trouble did they get into?
Well, back in 2018, the Nevada Gaming Commission slapped them with a $1.75 million fine for a whole, laundry list of violations. They were caught taking bets after sporting events had already ended, accepting wagers from people outside of Nevada where sports betting wasn't legal at the time, and even making incorrect payouts to over 1,400 bettors.
Those are some pretty serious offenses. It sounds like they were trying to push the boundaries of legality and perhaps cutting corners wherever they could.
Yeah. It certainly seems that way. And to make matters worse, this wasn't their first time in the, penalty box. In 2014, they were fined $5.5 million for failing to prevent a top executive from making illegal bets. And then again in 2016 for shortchanging 20,000 bettors by a total of $70,000.
It's hard to believe that a company entrusted with handling such large sums of money could be so, careless or perhaps even deliberately negligent. What was their explanation for all of these missteps?
The company tried to, deflect blame by claiming that many of these errors were due to software glitches, but given their history of infractions, it's hard not to be skeptical. Ultimately, the CEO, Leah Midas, was forced to resign, which speaks volumes about the seriousness of these violations.
It's a shame when a company with so much potential ends up, tarnishing its reputation like that. It really highlights the importance of having a strong ethical compass and a culture of compliance in any industry, but especially in one where so much money is at stake. But Fiona, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about something that might be a bit more relatable to our listeners. What about those times when casino employees themselves get caught up in illegal activities? I'm talking about the people on the front lines, dealing cards, running the games, and interacting with players on a daily basis.
That's a great point, Russell, and it happens more often than people realize. A good example of this is the case of Monarch Casino in Black Hawk, Colorado, back in 2022. It's a case that shows how even, seemingly small acts of rule-breaking can have significant consequences.
Okay, I'm curious. What happened at Monarch Casino?
Well, think back to those days when you might have asked someone older to buy you a beer because you weren't of legal drinking age. In this case, 3 Monarch Casino employees were caught accepting bets from people who lived outside of Colorado, where sports betting wasn't yet legal.
So they were essentially acting as, like, middlemen for people who couldn't place bets themselves. That seems like a pretty risky proposition for everyone involved.
It was a gamble that didn't pay off. They were caught, fired from their jobs, and the casino itself was fined $400,000 by the Colorado Gaming Commission. It's a reminder that even if you're not the one placing the bets, facilitating illegal gambling activity can still, land you in hot water.
You would think that those employees working in a heavily regulated industry would know better than to take those risks. Was this a case of them just trying to make a quick buck, or was there, like, something more to the story?
What's interesting about this case is that Mon Casino actually self-reported the incident to the authorities. They discovered the employees' actions during an internal review and took immediate steps to, address the situation.
So they did the right thing by coming clean, but he still got fined. That seems a bit harsh, doesn't it?
It might seem that way, but it highlights how seriously regulators take these matters. Even if a casino tries to do the right thing by self-reporting violations, they'll still face consequences if they've, broken the rules. It's a zero-tolerance policy when it comes to maintaining the integrity of the gambling industry.
That's a tough lesson to learn, but it definitely sends a clear message about the importance of compliance. But Fiona, we've been focusing on, like, financial shenanigans and regulatory violations. What about those cases where a casino just flat out refuses to pay out legitimate winnings? Those stories always seem to grab the headlines and make people question the fairness of the, entire system.
Those cases are definitely heartbreaking because they often involve individuals who believe they've hit the jackpot, only to have their dreams crushed by casino's refusal to pay. One case that stands out is the story of Katrina Bookman and Resorts World Casino in New York.
Oh, yes, I remember hearing about that case. Wasn't it something about a massive slot machine jackpot that never got paid out?
That's right. Picture this. Katrina Bookman is playing the Sphinx Wild slot machine, bets just 40 cents, and suddenly the machine lights up, bells go off, and a message flashes on the screen. Congratulations, you've won $42,949,672.76.
That's life-changing money. I can only imagine the excitement she must have felt in that moment. What happened next? Did she get to, walk away a multimillionaire?
Sadly, no. Her joy was short-lived. The casino quickly informed her that it was a machine error, a glitch, and that the jackpot wasn't real.
Wait, so they just refused to pay out after she had seemingly won such a, massive amount?
Yes. They claimed that the machine was malfunctioning and that the maximum payout for that particular machine was only $6,500. They even offered her a steak dinner as a, consolation prize.
A steak dinner. After thinking she'd won nearly $43 million, that's almost insulting, isn't it?
It certainly adds insult to injury. Katrina Bookman refused to accept their explanation and decided to take Resorts World Casino to court, hoping to claim what she believed were her, rightful winnings.
Good for her. I admire her for standing up for herself. What was the outcome of the case? Did the court force the casino to pay up?
Unfortunately, the court ruled in favor of the casino. They cited the fine print on the machine, which stated that malfunctions voided all pays and plays. So not only did she not receive the $42 million, but they wouldn't even award her the $6,500 she might have legitimately won.
That's just heartbreaking. It really makes you wonder about the fairness of those disclaimers and whether casinos can simply, hide behind them when it's convenient. It's a David versus Goliath situation where the individual player rarely stands a chance against the, powerful casino.
It raises serious questions about consumer rights in the gambling industry. This case sparked a lot of debate about whether those, small print disclaimers hold up in court and whether players have any real recourse when faced with situations like this. It also highlights the importance of understanding the rules of the games you play and being aware of the fine print, even though it's often overlooked.
It's a stark reminder that even in a heavily regulated industry like gambling, there are still instances where players can feel like the system is, rigged against them, especially when faced with a mountain of legal jargon and fine print.
Absolutely, Russell. And it's important for players to be aware of those disclaimers and to understand their rights, although those rights can often feel, limited in the face of powerful casino corporations.
This has been quite the eye-opening journey so far, Fiona. From rigged poker machines in Australia to mob skimming in Las Vegas to heartbreaking jackpot disputes in New York. It seems the world of casino cheating is, full of surprises. And I have a feeling we have a few more twists and turns ahead of us. We've journeyed from those glitzy casinos of Australia to the neon-lit streets of Las Vegas, and even delved into the complexities of, well, money laundering.
Wow.
But Fiona, before we wrap up this deep dive into the darker side of casinos, I have one more question for you. Have you come across any cases that involve those, high-stakes games, the ones that conjure up images of James Bond, elegant casinos, and, fortunes won and lost on a single spin of the roulette wheel?
As a matter of fact, I have. One case that fits that description perfectly involves the Ritz Club in London back in 2004. It's a story that has all the elements of a classic spy thriller. A glamour setting, a trio of cunning players, and accusations of high-tech cheating.
Okay, you've definitely piqued my interest. Tell me more about this case.
Imagine this. A sophisticated Hungarian woman, accompanied by two Serbian men, walks into the luxurious Ritz Club casino. They head straight for the roulette table. On their first night, they manage to walk away with £100,000 in chips.
Not a bad start to their evening, I'd say. But I'm guessing that was just the beginning of their winning streak.
You're right. The next evening, they return to the roulette table, and this time they won a staggering £1.2 million.
Wow, that's what I call hitting the jackpot.
Yeah.
But I bet the casino wasn't too thrilled about this turn of events.
They were far from pleased. The Ritz immediately suspected foul play, convinced that the trio had used some sort of sophisticated device, like, a laser scanner, to predict where the roulette ball would land.
A laser scanner. That sounds like something straight out of a James Bond film. Did they find any evidence to support their claim?
Interestingly enough, no. Despite a thorough investigation by Scotland Yard, no laser scanner or, any other cheating device was ever found.
So it was just a case of incredibly good luck, or perhaps they were just, very skilled roulette players who managed to beat the odds.
That's what the trio claimed, arguing that they were simply, lucky that night. But the Ritz remained unconvinced, and much to the players' dismay, refused to pay out the winnings.
What did? They accused them of cheating but couldn't find any proof, and then still refused to pay. That seems incredibly unfair. What happened next? Did the players take legal action?
They did. The case went to court, with the trio maintaining their innocence. And the Ritz, steadfastly refusing to hand over the £1.2 million. It became a highly publicized legal battle, with experts debating the probabilities of such a winning streak and the possibility of, undetectable cheating methods.
This case really highlights how, even in the world of high-stakes gambling, where millions can change hands in a single night, there's still, a lot of gray area. It's a world where accusations of cheating are, easily made. But proof can be elusive.
It's a reminder that the age-old tension between the gambler and the house remains, even in the most sophisticated and, luxurious settings.
Fiona, this has been an absolutely fascinating journey through the shadowy world of casino cheating. We've covered so much ground, from rigged poker machines to mob skimming operations to high-tech cheating scandals. It's clear that the ways in which casinos can try to gain an unfair advantage are as, diverse as the games themselves.
It's been a pleasure sharing these stories with you, Russell, and I think it's important for anyone who, steps into a casino, whether it's a small local establishment or a grand casino in Monte Carlo, to be aware of the potential pitfalls and to understand that things aren't always, what they seem.
Knowledge is power, and understanding how casinos can, manipulate the rules or exploit loopholes can help players make informed decisions and protect themselves.
Absolutely. Being an informed gambler is the best way to ensure you have a, fair and enjoyable experience.
Well, that brings us to the end of another deep dive on Gambling Flow. I'm Russell Kane, and a big thank you to our expert guest, Fiona Blake, for sharing her incredible insights into the world of casinos caught cheating. We hope you found this deep dive as fascinating as we did.
Thanks for having me, Russell. It's always a pleasure to, talk about the intricacies of the gambling world.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Gambling Flow so you don't miss out on any of our future deep dives into the exciting and sometimes shady world of gambling. Don't forget to like this episode, leave a comment, and share it with your friends. Until next time, remember, play smart, play safe, and may the odds be ever in your favor.
Good luck out there.